So thank you for inviting me. And I thought what would be useful to spend some time talking about is trying to frame the conversation of how we think about data, how we think about these different areas of data and data science these days. And the first thing to start off with is something that we kind of all know. We all know data is important. But if we ask ourselves, how do we really know that data is important? What tells us that data is important? Like, what is it about there that says, wow, this is something that we've got to know about? You know, the first thing is, any day where you look, it's on the cover of magazines. It's data deluge. It's in Popular Science, even on The Economist. And there's best-selling books on Amazon. It's really popular. I mean, people even put guys on lists. There's stories in the New York Times about this stuff. You know, you got to watch out for this guy, not because he's from Stanford, but because he's going to show up a bit later. There's even the demand for data scientists is at an all-time high, and this is a graph from LinkedIn, and the demand for that. And this just goes up to 2010. If you look at 2011, the growth is just even staggering on top of that. It's another jump up. So when you think about that, it's almost like data is the new black. It's this new hot thing. But I think at some point we have to think about ourselves and we have to bring a little bit of balance back, especially here in an academic setting. What do we ask ourselves? What's really the balance of data? What's the real promise? What's overhyped? And I think sometimes it's useful to bring it back to a very simple experiment. So I brought an experiment with me. And this, in fact, is a very pink towel that covers the experiment. And here it is. So if you guys can't see this, you're going to need to move. Because that's about all I can move it. So you're going to want to see it. So to start this is a real simple device. In fact, this is one of the first devices used to show that chaos theory existed. It's a double pendulum. It's very simple. It's one pendulum connected to another. You guys awake so far? Right? So everything about this, it can be described with 4 variables. You only need 4 variables. You need the position of this, the angular velocity of this, the angular velocity of this. That's it. Think about the last time you looked at a spreadsheet or some type of data that had 4 variables on it. Right? My kids' graphs of like their healthcare doesn't even have 4 variables. Right? There's nothing out there that's only got 4 variables. And so here's what we're going to do. To get a sense of this, we're going to play a little game. So to do this game, first you need to raise your right hand. Good. So far, everyone in Berkeley is correct with their rights. All right? Simon didn't say put him down. Now raise your left hand. OK, now what we're going to do is practice. We're going to clap on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. This time, we're going to clap with a little more enthusiasm on 3. 1, 2, 3. OK, so now you guys have got the trick. Now here's your job. Your job is to guess when the last time this blue piece is going to go through there. OK? The last time it's going to go through there. Now, you also want to be the first person to guess when this is going to be the last time. Honorary degrees will be given for this. Berkeley regents have told me so, right? So if it goes through and you clap and it goes through again, what happens? You lose. Don't be a loser. Okay? If it goes through and it's the last time and someone claps before you, you lose. Don't be a loser. Okay? So this is actually a little more tricky. So you guys are going to want to move. Not because also if it flies off that way, you're in trouble. Okay? So are you guys ready? Okay. Now we know who the type A people are. They're like sitting there. Yep, that's Quinn's there. He's there. The people that are too cool, that are leaning back, they're like, OK, I got it. All right, so here we go. Good job so far. Now, this is going to get a little tricky. So instead of 1 clap, you're going to get 2 claps. So think about this. 4 variables. Last time you saw a spreadsheet with 4 variables, you don't see them. Right? And here, every one of you is a data product. Why are you a data product? Your eyes are taking in observations. Your brain is processing this. And it's making a prediction. And what is it telling you? What's that moment of surprise when you're going like, wow, what's that doing? Right? Nice try. right? That surprise. Your brain is making this forecast, and they're wrong. This is telling you, as a data product, you suck. You are a terrible data product. Right? 4 variables, and still. I never knew Berkeley was this conservative. Like, clapping. That's pretty good. So I think that's it. So that's pretty good. So here's the thing. This type of device, if I put 2 of these together and let them go at the same time, they would do exactly the same thing for about a second, maybe a second and a quarter before they do very different behavior. In fact, you'll see at this time, it may do a whole bunch of different stuff. So suddenly with 4 variables, all of a sudden, this is a chaotic system. And it's incredibly hard to predict. It's incredibly hard to make a forecast. Yet, we are talking about big data. 4 variables, such a simple thing. So what does that tell us? What do we take away from this simple experiment and such complexity? Especially when us, as humans, are trying to make these forecasts and make these predictions, and yet we can't do a very good job of it. Well, there's 2 very important lessons from it. The first lesson is that you really have to have high-speed, timely, accurate measurements. Now, how do you think about this? Well, there's an easy way to think about it. It's a broomstick. You ever try to balance a broomstick? What do you do when you try to balance it? Right? Rats. Right? When you try to balance a broomstick, what happens? You're trying to do these real micro controls, right? Your eye is processing this information. You're taking in the observations, and then you're trying to balance it. You're doing real fast control. In fact, you can do the exact same thing. You can actually design a very simple control algorithm that will balance as many of these double pendulums on top of each other as you like. It's actually pretty simple to write. And what you're doing there is doing the same exact microcontrols. But the important thing about that is that you have to have high-speed observations. You have to see it. Now, how do you prove that to yourself? You ever try to balance a broomstick drunk? Right? That's your homework. Right? Balance it drunk. You slow. You can't see the observations. Your brain isn't processing as fast. That's latency. When that latency comes in, that's the inability. That's when you're going to drop it. The second thing that is there is you have to have that high-speed control. Right? That latency and high-speed control have to come together. So you've got to have the high-speed observations. You've got to see something very quickly. If you're not convinced of that, try to do it in a dark room. Try to do it with a strobe light. It's equally as hard. So you need the high-speed observations combined with low latency, fast corrections. So what do we take away from that? How do we start thinking about that? Well, what I'd like to tell you about is a quick story about this power of data science and how data science in some of these companies can massively change the game. In fact, the whole industry. But before we start about that, I think it's useful to think about how data science has changed massively in just the last 10 years. And the way to think about that is the speed at which we can do analytics. And this is one of my favorite graphs to explain that. So how many of you guys know that is Captain Kirk? How many of you know that is the Priceline guy? Right? That's how you tell the generational gap right there. Right? So this is from that famous scene where he's sitting there going, "Con!" Right? And here's the great thing. What this person did is said, how many A's are there in con out there on the web? Right? So this is something that now we look at this and we go, oh, of course, this is simple. This is an interview problem. Right? This is something where all we do is we're going to write a quick script out there, and we're going to scrape, and we're going to get the count. Think about this 10, 15 years ago, what that took. First, you got to go get a line. An internet connection line. You got to get a rack of computers. Okay, now we need a database. What's our database going to be? Are we going to have to go buy a contract with somebody to get a database? Oh, wait, we might need an ETL layer. We might need some processing. It was a lot of money. In fact, if you're in a company, it was a lot of paperwork to just do something so simple. Now you spin up an EC2 cluster, you go scrape and get stuff. And here's the thing. This curvature of the graph, that's not really that surprising, right? But what's surprising is, hell, there's somebody out here with 81 A's. What's 81 A's? Your face is falling flat on the computer or keyboard to get that many A's, right? And it's not just one person or one page. There's 100 pages out there with 81 A's. So now what we can use the data to do is we can say, we can quickly process the data, but then we can take action on the data. We can go and actually investigate. What is it about this? What's unique about this element that allows us to say, ah, there's something interesting there, right? And we can sort of look for these spikes and these clever things. And so suddenly what we're doing is we're moving from just characterizing the data to being able to understand what's really behind it. What are the actions that are there? And so back to that story of data science and how that exact idea comes to fruition. And that comes down to this idea of people you may know. And so some of you may have seen this on LinkedIn. It's right here in the box. And it's this real simple idea. But here's the thing. You actually all know about people you know. But the thing is, how do you think about building people you know for the first time for a social network site? Because when LinkedIn was first built, there wasn't a people you may know. There wasn't anything on there. When you show up to the site for the first time, you'd get there and you'd see a page. And then what you'd have to do is you'd either have to do one of two things. Right? The first thing is you do address book import. It's like, really, on the first date? Address book import? Right? 2, you do a search. You got to search for somebody right away. And so if you're faced with a search box to find your friends, what do you do? It's like saying, which friend do I put in? If I asked you right now, which friend should you enter in there? Do you have one? Or you kind of think, oh, gosh, which person should I enter? So it's not a very good experience. And so along came this guy, Jonathan Goldman, a physicist out of Stanford, and he had an idea. And he recognized something. And the idea kind of goes like this. And you actually all know it for the very first time. When you walked into this conference area and you went and you registered, what's the first thing that you felt like? Right? You didn't see anybody you know. You're kind of there. You're kind of feeling alone. Alone in your space. And so think about any moment where you've gone to a conference. Maybe this one, right? When you get to there the first time, are you the type of person that does the clockwise walk around the circle? The counterclockwise walk? Are you the person that goes, gets the drink? And you kind of hold it, and you're kind of like, oh, hey, what's up? You look at people you kind of know, so you know, I kind of recognize the person. And finally, you see somebody you know that you recognize, and then you're stuck to them. Right? You're glued onto them until you're like, finally, thank God there's somebody else I know, and I can leave this person. Right? And how does your feeling, how does your modality change? How does it actually, your whole body language, everything start to change when you realize that your kind of people are here? Right? These are your people. Right? Suddenly you're like, oh, this is my space. This is my, I feel comfortable. I can let down my hair. I feel okay. Right? That same notion. So how do you replicate that in a social experience like a social networking site like LinkedIn? Because here's the challenge. When you go to a social networking site like LinkedIn or Facebook or anything for the very first time, it's exactly like showing up in the room. Showing up to that conference for the very first time. But there's 2 big differences. You can't look across the room. You can't see people. So it's as if you were walking into a room that was dark. The second thing is that you could teleport away instantly at any time. Why? Because people just close the browser window. So you got to fight that. So Jonathan's brilliant insight was said, hey, you know what? We should be able to do this ourselves. Like, we should show you who you should know on this site. And so he came up with a very lightweight heuristic algorithm. In fact, he kind of went around to everybody and said, hey, you know what? This seemed like a good idea. And everyone said, meh, seems like an OK idea. So Jonathan said, no, I think I can make this work. And so what he did is he realized, he said, I can actually figure out an algorithm that's going to do this. And so here's the secret sauce of people you may know. You already know the entire algorithm. What's the first thing you say when you meet somebody for the first time? Where do you work? What do you do? Where do you live? Where did you go to school? Congrats. Now you actually know people you may know. That's it. Bunch of heuristics. Oh, you know Quentin? I know Quentin. Oh my gosh, Quentin, that guy. Oh. Right? All of a sudden, think about how that changes once you realize what is known as triangle closing. That sudden shift of closing the triangle. Right? That aspect is all you have to do. You just have to close the triangles. That simple idea, Jonathan said, hey, we should do this. And everyone, as I was saying, kind of said, nah, it seems like an OK idea. So what Jonathan did is said, there used to be an ad slot here. And he said, you know what? I'm going to take over that ad slot. I'm going to make every single one of you a people you may know. And I'm going to put 3 results in there. And you know what? You're going to click on them. And if it'll go to the right page. If you've already taken action on it and you see the ad again, you're still going to see the same results. But here's the thing. That ad had some of the highest click-through rates anybody had ever seen. Why? Because it's relevant content. And it was so powerful that suddenly you found sites all over the place started to use it. Facebook said, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. High Five tried to use it. Everybody, all the sites out there to this day are using some variant. If you go to sites where it's not direct connections, like Twitter, they're trying to do recommendations in a very similar way. So suddenly what you have happen is one guy, one single data scientist who has an idea, who's looking at the data, translates and says, oh my gosh, we can have a massive lever arm in the business. We can massively change the way that we think about this. And so what happens as a result, the whole industry transforms. And that's really part of the essence of this, is about data and what we can do nowadays. Because of the speed, because of the processing, the things that you can actually do with the data, suddenly you don't just have to be a back office shop with data. It's about moving data from all the way from the back end to the front end where we're building products and actually doing things. And with that, I think there's some important lessons to take away. And there's a lot of talk these days about all the great stuff around data. It's not just data, it's big data, and soon it'll be bigger data and faster data. That's great. That's important. But let's also take for a moment and recognize some of the froth that can happen with this. And let's ask ourselves, if we're really honest with ourselves, some of the challenges that can happen there. And one of those challenges, I think, is the first lesson, is to think about, use the data to have a conversation rather than make a decision. And this guy is one of my favorite data scientists. Why? Because what's the first thing Captain Kirk says when he's on the bridge, when there's the Romulans or the Klingons out there? What's he say? What do you think, Spock? Right? When's the last time you thought or heard of a data scientist directly on the bridge of maybe a military institution, maybe the front office of either a sports team or a Fortune 100 company? We don't. Yet here, they do. They were far ahead of their time. And so think about that for a second, because what is the analogy of that? That'd be like Kirk saying, hey, we need some data on these Klingons. And so somebody would say, you know what, I'll go get the data team on it. So they send some ensign out to the turbo shaft, and he goes down all the way in the bowels of the ship. And then he says, OK, I'm going to go. Captain wants some data on this. And they say, that's not the data he wants. He says, damn it, the captain says he wants it. Give us the data. They go, OK, fine, here's the data. They go back up. They go up to the bridge. And then the captain says, what the fuck is this? That's not what I said. And he goes back down, and he starts, he says, I told you so. That's the exact same thing that happens every day in business. Why aren't we putting the data scientists on the bridge? The second reason I think why that happened is because when people walk into a room with the data, they always put it on the screen, and it's this crazy Excel-looking spreadsheet that people are like, well, I don't understand it, and everyone's afraid to ask questions about the data. Because what's going to happen? A decision is supposed to be made. How about instead of having a decision being made, we decide to have a conversation about the data? Maybe as a result out of that data, we'll have a decision. But instead of that, we focus on the conversation. Because what that will do is that will up-level everybody. It will increase the sophistication of everybody in the organization. No longer will data be a power play by those that hold the data, because everyone suddenly will be talking about the data. So let's have a conversation rather than decisions. Number two, design your data products with failure in mind. I think it's so easy to have an arrogance that we love to put in our data products. Let's take that away. And here's a great example of that, is just this clip here.
My Tebow thinks I'm gay.
Let's try that again.
What's Tebow?
My Tebow thinks I'm gay.
What's Tebow?
It's a device that records television shows that you pick. And then based on what you pick, it records other shows that it thinks you'll like. You record Star Trek, Tebow assumes you like that kind of thing. And then when you're not home, it records the X-Files.
So what's the problem?
I had it record Will and Grace, a couple episodes of Ellen. Right away, the damn thing thinks I'm gay. Keeps recording Queer as Folk every episode. Last night, it recorded a Judy Garland movie.
Call the company. Just tell them you're not gay.
I want to be there when you make that call.
Exactly. I actually tried to outfox it, get it to go the other way. I had it record MTV Spring Break, Playboy After Dark, swimsuit competitions. Thing won't budge. Insists I'm gay. It's a problem.
So it's kind of a funny thing, but think about how true that is, right? When we interact with data products, often the thing is either like, sorry, I can't do that, or it has this kind of coldness, right? It's got the data products are cold. And you hear these things, if you look up like failures on Amazon for collaborative filters, there's all the time like you see all these kind of crazy results of recommendations, right? Or if you type in Google GPS and driving into a river or off a cliff, you'd be surprised at how many people do that. Right? And it's like, why are we designing these products that we know are going to fail because of relevancy? Let's design them in a way that they have humility, that they have a way to failure. It's kind of the same analogy when you used to have those 404 errors or where your site is down. The fail whale, it almost became comical to disarm a product experience that was bad with comedy, with humor. What about if we did that in the same way? If you're designing an insulin pump that's supposed to do all sorts of great data analysis type things, and you're typing in a terrible number, what about if it said, did you mean? Instead of, sorry, can't do that. Right? Pandora does a great job with this. When the data product fails and you put thumbs down, it'll say, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'll never do this again. It has a humility. It has a tone. Let's put that back in their data products. Third, make the data actionable. Let's not do data vomit. It's so easy just to throw a bunch of data up here. This is one of my favorite products. It's a Zeo. It's a headband that makes you look like a dork when you sleep. Trust me, my kids say it. And it tells you how you're sleeping. And so this is great. It tells me like I sleep like crap. Thanks. Because I needed a $100 device to tell me that. Right? Now, here's a data scientist way of looking at it. It's like, oh, here's a bunch of scores and numbers. That's great. In fact, the other day I scored 113, and yet I was terrible. And the reason I was terrible was because I was sick and I was coughing, but I slept for 10 hours. So instead, how about this? That this device would tell me, hey, you know what? You need to have between 55 minutes and an hour and 5 minutes of deep sleep in your first 3 hours of sleep. Otherwise, you're equivalent to being drunk for a day. I've tested it. No. And what if it also said that, hey, you know what? As long as you have that, you only need 5 hours of sleep. The same thing with scales. When these scales are out there, these fancy scales that measure your weight and report it to the web, it's like, great, that's the same thing as a mirror. How about telling me what I should do? And so while I'm picking on healthcare, it's easy to do that because we directly have it. The same thing is true when you make a dashboard or anything in your company. How about let's, instead of focusing on what the data we can put up there, what about what we're going to do because of the data? So I think I'll stop there. And I don't know if we have time for questions or we want to just jump to the panel.
I think we should probably jump to the panel.
Let's go straight to panel.
Thanks very much.